A fist flew through the air, aimed straight at the chest of a tomb guard, and the crowd at Arlington froze, breath caught in their throats. The man throwing the punch, a kung fu champion with a gold medal gleaming around his neck, smirked, expecting an easy win, a viral moment for his fans. To him, the guard was just a statue in a fancy uniform, trained to march, not fight. But what he didn't know, what no one in that stunned, whispering crowd could have guessed, was that the tomb guard standing silent before him had faced enemies in war zones most only see in movies. And in one swift, devastating move, the guard was about to teach a lesson that would echo far beyond the marble steps of the tomb. Before we dive into this story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe that values like honor, courage, and sacrifice still matter, join us in keeping their legacy alive. The sun hung low over Arlington National Cemetery, casting long shadows across rows of white headstones that stretched toward the horizon like silent soldiers standing at attention. The air carried the crisp bite of a Virginia autumn, and the faint rustle of leaves mingled with the steady, rhythmic click of polished boots on marble. 21 steps, a pause, a precise turn, another pause, 21 seconds of stillness, then 21 steps again. The tomb sentinel, Sergeant Marcus Hale, moved with mechanical precision, his M14 rifle resting on his shoulder, its bayonet glinting in the fading light. His uniform was flawless, every crease sharp enough to cut glass. His face, an unreadable mask of discipline. This was the tomb of the unknown soldier, a sacred monument to America's fallen, guarded day and night since 1937. To the tourists gathered beyond the velvet ropes, it was a solemn spectacle. To Marcus, it was a duty heavier than the rifle he carried. Through the crowd strode Li Wei Alex Chen, his championship kung fu belt slung over one shoulder, catching the sunlight like a badge of victory. At 32, Alex was a San Francisco native born to Chinese immigrants in the heart of Chinatown, now a martial arts legend with 5 national titles and 2 international golds. His black tracksuit embroidered with the dragon logo of Chen's Dragon Gate Academy clung to his athletic frame, and his 4-man entourage trailed behind their matching gear, screaming confidence. Mike, the cameraman, hoisted a sleek camera ready to capture educational content for Alex's 1.2 million YouTube subscribers. The others, Jake, Tony, and Chris, were top students, each a black belt, their presence amplifying Alex's aura of invincibility. Tourists parted instinctively as he approached, some recognizing him from viral fight clips, others just drawn to his swagger. Alex stopped a few feet from the velvet rope, hands on hips, studying Marcus with the critical eye of a fighter, sizing up an opponent. The crowd, families, veterans, school kids on a field trip, watched curiously, sensing something brewing. Alex's voice cut through the quiet, loud and confident, pure California cool. All right, folks, gather around. You're about to get a lesson in real martial arts. He gestured at Marcus, who continued his march, eyes fixed forward. Look at this guy, standing like a statue, rifle weighing him down, no mobility. This is ceremonial stuff, not combat readiness. In my dojo, we teach movement, power, flow, real fighting skills. This, he smirked, shaking his head, this is just for show. The crowd stirred. A mom from Ohio pulled her kids closer, whispering about respect. An older man in a Vietnam vet cap frowned, arms crossed. But a few teenagers nodded, phones already out filming the scene. Alex's entourage grinned, egging him on. "Show him, Alex," Jake called out, his voice carrying over the murmurs. "Let's see that kung fu stance." Alex dropped into a perfect horse stance, knees bent, arms coiled like springs, his body radiating controlled power. "This is how a fighter stands," he said loud enough for the back of the crowd to hear. Balanced, ready to strike or defend in any direction, not locked in place like some museum piece. Marcus marched on, his steps echoing in perfect rhythm. Click, click, click. His face didn't twitch, his eyes didn't waver, but the air around him seemed to tighten like a coiled spring under pressure. Alex circled closer to the rope, his movements fluid, almost theatrical. He launched a high side kick, stopping inches from the air, the motion so precise it drew gasps from the crowd. See that? That's kung fu, rooted in centuries of Chinese tradition, perfected in the ring. I've taken down world champs in under a minute. This guy? He gestured at Marcus again. He's trained to march, not fight. Big difference. A woman's voice cut through the tension, firm but warm, like a schoolteacher who'd seen it all. Young man, I'd suggest you rethink your approach. The tomb guards aren't what you think they are. Colonel Rebecca Ford stepped forward, her silver hair tucked under a volunteer guide's cap, her posture screaming military even in civilian clothes. At 65, she was a retired Marine and one of the first women to serve as a tomb sentinel decades ago. Her eyes locked on Alex with the calm authority of someone who'd faced worse than a cocky martial artist. These men are active-duty soldiers, she said evenly. They've seen combat, trained for it. That stillness you're mocking, it's discipline, not weakness. Alex flashed a grin, undeterred, his confidence unshaken. With all due respect, ma'am, I fought in full-contact matches across 3 continents. I run 5 dojos, train NFL stars, even worked with a few actors you'd recognize. He tapped the gold medal hanging around his neck, won in Shanghai last month. I know combat. This, he pointed at Marcus, now pausing at the end of his march, this is parade stuff. No offense, Mom, but it's not in the same league as what I do. The crowd was growing, drawn by the spectacle. A dad in a Patriots jersey whispered to his son, "This guy's going to regret this." A group of college kids snickered, one muttering, "Dude's got guts, I'll give him that." Mike zoomed in with the camera, capturing every word. "Content gold," he muttered to Jake. Alex raised his voice, playing to the audience like a ringside announcer. "All right, let's break it down. In Kung Fu, your stance is your foundation. Weight distributed, knees bent, hands ready." He demonstrated a series of forms, cat stance, crane kick, each move flowing into the next, a display of athletic artistry honed over 20 years. "Now look at our friend here." He waved dismissively at Marcus. Feet together, hands tied up with that rifle, center of gravity all wrong. In a real fight, he'd be done in seconds. Colonel Ford's eyes narrowed, but she kept her tone steady. "You're standing on sacred ground, son. The tomb honors soldiers who gave everything, men and women who didn't come home. These guards, they're not just standing there, they're trained to protect this place and everything it represents." Alex flashed a grin, undeterred, his confidence unshaken. "With all due respect, ma'am, I fought in full-contact matches across 3 continents. I run 5 dojos, train NFL stars, even worked with a few actors you'd recognize." He tapped the gold medal hanging around his neck, won in Shanghai last month. "I know combat. This," he pointed at Marcus, now pausing at the end of his march, "this is parade stuff. No offense, Mom, but it's not in the same league as what I do." The crowd was growing, drawn by the spectacle. A dad in a Patriots jersey whispered to his son, "This guy's going to regret this." A group of college kids snickered, one muttering, "Dude's got guts, I'll give him that." Mike zoomed in with the camera, capturing every word. "Content gold," he muttered to Jake. Alex raised his voice, playing to the audience like a ringside announcer. "All right, let's break it down. In Kung Fu, your stance is your foundation. Weight distributed, knees bent, hands ready." He demonstrated a series of forms, cat stance, crane kick, each move flowing into the next, a display of athletic artistry honed over 20 years. "Now look at our friend here." He waved dismissively at Marcus. Feet together, hands tied up with that rifle, center of gravity all wrong. In a real fight, he'd be done in seconds. Colonel Ford's eyes narrowed, but she kept her tone steady. "You're standing on sacred ground, son. The tomb honors soldiers who gave everything, men and women who didn't come home. These guards, they're not just standing there, they're trained to protect this place and everything it represents." Alex flashed a grin, undeterred, his confidence unshaken. "With all due respect, ma'am, I fought in full-contact matches across 3 continents. I run 5 dojos, train NFL stars, even worked with a few actors you'd recognize." He tapped the gold medal hanging around his neck, won in Shanghai last month. I know combat. This, he pointed at Marcus, now pausing at the end of his march, this is parade stuff. No offense, Mom, but it's not in the same league as what I do. The crowd was growing, drawn by the spectacle. A dad in a Patriots jersey whispered to his son, "This guy's going to regret this." A group of college kids snickered, one muttering, "Dude's got guts, I'll give him that." Mike zoomed in with the camera, capturing every word. "Content gold," he muttered to Jake. Alex raised his voice, playing to the audience like a ringside announcer. "All right, let's break it down. In Kung Fu, your stance is your foundation. Weight distributed, knees bent, hands ready." He demonstrated a series of forms, cat stance, crane kick, each move flowing into the next, a display of athletic artistry honed over 20 years. "Now look at our friend here." He waved dismissively at Marcus. Feet together, hands tied up with that rifle, center of... Alex moved with explosive speed, his body a blur of practiced precision. His fist shot forward in a straight punch aimed at Marcus's sternum, a controlled strike, the kind he'd used to win tournaments delivered with textbook form. The impact was sharp, a thud that echoed across the plaza. Marcus's uniform absorbed the blow, his body swaying slightly, but he didn't flinch. A thin trickle of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth, the only sign the punch had landed. Alex stepped back, triumphant, turning to the crowd. "See that? No reaction, no counter? That's what I'm talking about. Ceremony, not combat." His smile froze as Marcus's eyes shifted, locking onto his with a predator's focus. The change was instant, terrifying. One moment, Marcus was a statue. The next, he was a weapon. His rifle hit the marble with a clatter, and before Alex could blink, Marcus's right hand darted forward in a single, precise strike, a CQC move, fingers slightly curled, targeting the solar plexus with surgical accuracy. The blow wasn't flashy, just brutally effective, designed to neutralize, not perform. Alex's breath left him in a violent whoosh, his diaphragm seizing up, his knees buckling. He staggered, eyes wide with shock, hands clutching his chest as he gasped for air that wouldn't come. The crowd gasped, phones dropping as people stared, stunned. Marcus stepped forward, his movements fluid but restrained, and executed a perfect leg sweep. Alex hit the ground hard, his championship belt skittering across the marble with a metallic clink. "Stay down," Marcus said, his voice low and calm, the first words he'd spoken. "Breathe slow." Alex wheezed, his face pale, his body curled in on itself. The crowd was silent, the only sound his ragged gasps. Mike's camera lay forgotten on the ground, and the rest of the entourage backed away, their earlier bravado gone. Jake took a step forward, then froze as Marcus's gaze shifted to him, cold and unyielding. Jake raised his hands, retreating. "No trouble, man," he muttered. Colonel Ford moved to Marcus's side, her voice cutting through the tension. "That's enough, everyone. Show's over." She turned to the crowd, her tone firm but not unkind. "What you just saw wasn't a performance. It was a reminder. These sentinels aren't actors, they're soldiers, elite, combat-trained, here to honor our fallen." She gestured to Marcus, who'd retrieved his rifle and resumed parade rest, his face impassive despite the blood at his mouth. This man served 2 tours in Afghanistan, trained with special reconnaissance units. That strike, it's not in any dojo. It's designed to end threats, not win points. Alex, still on the ground, managed a weak cough, his breathing slowly returning. "How?" he rasped, looking up at Marcus. "How'd you—" Marcus didn't answer, but Colonel Ford did, her voice softening slightly. "Different training, Mr. Chen. You fight for trophies. He fights for survival. The Tomb Guard's discipline, those 21 steps, that stillness isn't weakness, it's control, the kind you need when lives are on the line." Security officers arrived, their radios crackling as they surveyed the scene. The lead officer, a nonsense type with a buzz cut, nodded to Marcus. "Situation contained, Sergeant." "Affirmative," Marcus replied, his voice steady, returning to parade rest. The officer turned to Alex, now sitting up, still clutching his chest. "Sir, you're under arrest for assaulting a serving soldier. That's a federal offense, especially here." Alex nodded, wincing as he stood with help from the officers. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a mix of pain and dawning respect. "I didn't know," he said quietly, looking at Marcus. I thought you were just ceremonial." Colonel Ford's eyes softened, but her tone stayed firm. "A common mistake. The Tomb Guard comes from the 3rd Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard. These soldiers rotate between combat deployments and this duty. Marcus here, he's been in war zones. You can't imagine. That uniform doesn't make him less of a fighter. It makes him more." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others whispering to their kids about what they'd learned. A young woman in a Georgetown hoodie raised her hand. "Why don't they tell us this stuff in the brochures?" Colonel Ford smiled, a hint of pride in her voice. "We don't advertise it. The tomb speaks for itself. But every sentinel is a volunteer, vetted for exemplary service. Less than 20% pass the training. They memorize pages of history, maintain perfect uniforms, and yes, they train to protect this place, not just with ceremony, with force if needed." Alex, now steadier, looked at Marcus, who stood at his post, eyes forward again. "That strike," he said, his voice still but sincere. "I've never felt anything like it. 15 years in the ring, full contact matches. Nothing comes close." Marcus didn't respond, but Colonel Ford spoke for him. "It's not about points, Mr. Chen. It's about precision. One move, one result. That's military training." As the security team prepared to escort Alex away, he paused, turning to Marcus. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry I misjudged you, badly." Marcus's eyes flicked to him briefly, a nod so subtle it was barely noticeable. "Most people do," he said, his voice quiet but clear. "They see the uniform, not the soldier." Colonel Ford addressed the crowd one last time as the officers led Alex toward a vehicle. "The tomb of the unknown soldier isn't just a monument, it's a promise to honor those who gave everything, no questions asked. The Sentinels embody that promise. Their discipline, their silence, it's not for show, it's for them." She gestured to the white headstone stretching into the distance. "And for us." Alex, now in the back of the security vehicle, looked out at the tomb, his expression a mix of humility and realization. He'd come here to prove a point, to show the world his kung fu was unmatched. Instead, he'd learned something deeper about respect, about sacrifice, about the quiet strength of those who serve. As the vehicle pulled away, he muttered to himself, "I've been fighting for medals. They're fighting for something bigger." The crowd dispersed, tourists moving on to other memorials, but their steps were quieter now, their voices softer. A dad explained to his son, "Those guards, they're real heroes, not just for the cameras." The boy nodded, clutching a tiny American flag. Colonel Ford watched them go, then turned to Marcus, giving him a nod of respect. He returned it, resuming his march. 21 steps, pause, turn, pause. Back in San Francisco a month later, Alex stood in his flagship dojo, addressing a packed class. His championship belt hung on the wall, but he didn't point to it. Instead, he held up a photo of the tomb projected on a screen behind him. "I learned something at Arlington," he said, his voice steady but humbler. "Strength isn't just in your fists or your forms. It's in discipline, in honoring those who came before us. Starting today, we're adding a new program, free classes for veterans, because real warriors don't fight for glory, they fight for each other." The students applauded, and Alex felt something shift inside him. For the first time, he didn't care about the cameras or the likes. He'd found a new kind of strength, one that bridged his Chinese roots and his American heart. And somewhere in the quiet of Arlington, a sentinel marched on, guarding the unknown, embodying a truth Alex would never forget. True power lies not in victory, but in duty. So, what would you have done in Alex's shoes? Would you have seen the soldier behind the ceremony, or fallen for the same mistake? This is a story of honor, humility, and the heroes who stand watch over our nation's heart. If it moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Visit Arlington, pay your respects, and never forget what those white stones stand for. We'll be back with another story of American grit and grace. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep honoring those who serve. If you enjoyed the story, consider sending a super chat to help bring more stories like this. Now, click on the video on the screen to hear another story that's just as powerful and captivating, with courage, sacrifice, and a choice that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about duty and justice. Click on the video.